wonderful to be here with you today, Dana. I've been looking forward to this conversation for some time, with a bit of dread, I admit, given my own habits and practices. You are, of course, a leading nutritional therapist who, and I quote, helps individuals understand how food, movement, sleep, stress management, and lifestyle choices impact how we feel, think, and perform. That's a great phrase. And gosh, how relevant is that to strategic leaders, the audience for this podcast? So, of course, we're going to talk about nutrition, gut health, mental health, and high performance, and how they're all inextricably linked. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic. We've got a lot to cover. This is a topic that I think has been lurking under the surface, no pun intended there, for a while, even though in other aspects of life and professions, for example, elite athletes, it's absolutely fundamental. So I asked myself the question, why isn't it with elite professionals, elite leaders? But let's start with painting the picture. A typical executive or entrepreneur probably knows they need to eat well. They probably have read the books, watched the TV series, but then life gets in the way. Long hours, lots of deadlines, family or caring commitments. Without being too negative, perhaps you just describe the sort of aspects of bad nutrition that you often see in your client base.
A lot of it is people seeing food as fuel rather than people seeing food as a source of nutrients and a source of raw materials that help our bodies to perform the best that they can perform. And I think especially in the executive level, there are a lot of people who don't have time. So maybe grabbing foods on the go. A lot of those foods that you can grab and go are very highly processed, quite nutrient poor. And if you're eating on the run as well, that has an impact to how you actually digest your food.
Right. Okay. So there's a lot there already. Wow. I'm looking at myself and feeling very self-reflective, wondering, gosh, how have I come to who I am today? But that's a different story, and perhaps we may talk about that later. So let's flip it for a moment then and talk about some of the basic components of good nutrition and good diets. So if somebody's not stressed, they're not running around, and they're eating well, what would a typical diet overall look like and obviously feel like?
Yeah. The organization that I belong to, which is the organization that supports nutritional therapists, we recommend that a starting point for good nutrition is 7 portions of fruit and vegetables a day, but you're capping that at 2 portions of fruit because of the sugar content in fruit. So your starting base is at least 5 portions of vegetables, and then you can add in your 2 portions of fruit that go alongside that. That should make up the majority of your plate. But each time we eat, we should be eating carbohydrates, preferably complex carbohydrates, so those carbohydrates that get digested slowly.
Can you give us some examples of what's the difference between complex carbohydrates and the others?
So complex, it'll be complex and simple carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates are normally higher in fiber, so are a lot more complicated for the body to break down and then release their energy from it. So simple carbohydrates would be things like white pasta, white bread, cookies, cake, etc., etc. But complex carbohydrates are carbohydrates such as wild rice or brown rice. Quinoa is another grain that's really great. You're also thinking about things like sweet potatoes or normal potatoes. Yep. Those sorts of foods which are a little bit more complex, higher in fiber, so therefore break down in the body slower and therefore release their sugars slower.
Yep. Okay.
So carbohydrates should form part of your plate, but then you're also looking at sufficient protein. And what a lot of people are still scared of is fat. And fat is essential for our brain health. 60% of our brain is fat. We need to be feeding it fat.
60% of our brain. Sorry, you're throwing lots out here. I'm just processing it. Obviously, my slow brain. 60% of our brain is fat.
It is. It is indeed. And that's why a lot of people who don't eat fat might suffer from mental health conditions or poor cognitive function as well.
Wow. So again, I always thought it was 5 portions a day, but it's 7 according to you. And obviously, and what about the sugar aspects? We're getting into all the detail, but these are the questions I've come up with, and I've seen, and my own clients have sort of raised in and around our conversations, even though I don't have a background in this area. The
Yep.
sugar bit, I thought sugars in fruit were good sugars, but too much
They
is
are.
bad?
Too much of anything is bad, really. And it's about maintaining blood sugar balance. So you are trying to cap those sugars from fruit at 2 portions a day.
Right, okay. So that's a picture of what's good. And what about the process of eating? You referred earlier, not good
Mm,
to run around and eat. I mean, I'm not sure
mm,
that's possible. But I get the point.
mhm,
What
mhm.
about the process? What are some good habits to have?
Eating in a non-stress environment and actually focusing on what you're eating, because the process of digestion actually begins before you put food in your mouth. So before you put food in your mouth, just the simple act of smelling food and looking at it starts the digestion process, which means that your stomach starts to produce more stomach acid. So that first phase of digestion is actually before you even put food in your mouth.
Mm,
And if you're running around or eating on the run, that means that your stomach acid isn't necessarily high enough to be able to digest your food.
wow. Gosh, that makes a lot of sense now. Even though a lot
Yeah,
of people either are eating quickly, doing
yeah,
something else, and
yeah.
actually probably under some form of explicit or implicit stress. What are
Yeah.
the? I mean, you worked with a whole range of different executives. What are the
Mhm.
typical problems that they come to you with when they say, "Look, Dan, I really need help with X"? What are the
Mhm.
sort of typical areas?
At the moment, I'm seeing a lot of gut health related conditions. So people are coming to me who have had years and years and years of poor gut health, whether it be bloating or indigestion or just not, moving stools too quickly, not moving stool quick enough.
Right.
So the main area that I'm seeing at the moment is this poor gut health, but it's almost at a chronic state where they've had all the tests through the NHS. They've been told that there's nothing on paper wrong with them, but they know that they don't feel well. So they're coming to me for more of those answers.
And if they've had poor gut health for some time,
Mm,
I know every case is different and unique,
mhm,
but can you
mhm.
repair? Or is it too late? If you've had it, for example, you've been working for 20 to 30 years and you've been practicing all those bad things,
Mm.
can you repair it?
Yes, I believe so. Often gut health related conditions, there are multifactorial. It's not just our body works in systems. It doesn't work in isolation. So the digestive system doesn't work in isolation. But yes, I do believe that the gut can be repaired. A lot of the testing that NHS does is cameras up and down, which look for anything structural. But often what they're not testing for is bacterial imbalances within both the large and the small intestine. And those bacterial imbalances can lead to digestive symptoms such as bloating and gas, diarrhea, constipation, all of those sorts of symptoms are often as a result of bacterial imbalance. So if you know the landscape, if you know what the levels of bacteria are within somebody's gut, then you can form a more targeted treatment protocol to be able to support individuals to healing their gut health and then feeling a lot better from there.
Okay. I mean, these issues, I mean, the impact of poor gut health and other aspects of bad habits have a huge cost to business, both
Mm,
in terms of physical health, people being off, being less productive, and mental health. Yet
mm,
my ill-informed take on the business landscape when it comes to nutrition is that it's maybe talked about, but it's pretty quiet. I mean, I don't remember getting very much advice in my early career about nutrition, if any.
mhm,
I mean, when I got older and became more senior, then there were definitely some sort of occasional seminars. But
mhm,
how would you? I mean, you work in the business community, business,
mhm.
world. How would you describe the picture when it comes to the awareness and understanding of nutrition in business?
I think in the younger generations, it's a lot more accepted and it's a lot more talked about. I think the
Right.
younger generations are looking at health and well-being a lot more, whereas the older generations still feel like it's not something that really needs to be taken into account. I think a lot of people take their health for granted. I think we abuse our bodies to the extent where we just expect them to keep on working. But the case is that our bodies will one day stop performing optimally if we're not giving them the correct raw ingredients.
Yes, absolutely. So given that, I mean, it's, in a way, it sounds so obvious. And if you are somebody who realizes, whether you are younger in age and spirit, or perhaps have had some of those bad habits, what steps can you take? Sort of small steps forward. I mean, because the reality is, if you've been doing this for years and years, it's not going to be snapping the fingers and just suddenly, oh yes, I'm going to do meal preparation and have a seven pieces of fruit and veg per day and so forth. What nudges, what steps forward could you take to improve your nutrition?
I think the base might start with just accepting and acknowledging the fact that our bodies work by using nutrients. So we need to see food as not only fuel, but food as a source of optimizing both our physical and our mental health. And from there, I think when anybody is trying to make a change, you need to make small, achievable changes first and build on those, because making those small, achievable changes helps motivate people to make bigger and better changes, especially if you're feeling better from making those small changes. And when it comes to nutrition, I don't only talk about food, I talk about movement and sleep and being outside, daylight exposure, all those sorts of things. So it's about picking 2, 3, 4 small things that you can do to improve your health and well-being. So when it comes to food, can it be, all right, every time I eat, there's going to be a fruit and or vegetable on the plate. So be that a meal or a snack. If I'm having a piece of toast, can I put some avocado on it? If I'm having a sandwich, can I throw some lettuce into it? So small changes like that. Can I put something of fruit and vegetable content on my plate? I think using things like nuts and seeds is great to replace snacks. So if you have been snacking, can you replace your snack with something like nuts and seeds, which is going to be beneficial both for your energy and for your mental health? Movement. So if you have not been moving at all, can you start walking for 5 minutes a day? Can you set a reminder on your phone to get up every hour and walk around the house or walk up and down the stairs? Sleep. Can you prioritize sleep a little bit more? Can you get to bed half an hour earlier? Caffeine. Can you reduce your caffeine intake and start listening to your body in the afternoon and knowing that it probably needed more sleep last night than an extra cup of coffee now?
I mean, when you break it down in these ways, gosh, David, what are you doing? It feels quite manageable, and I guess it's also being aware of the moments in your day or your week that trigger bad habits. I remember, I say this in the past tense, of course. I remember, high stress moments. It could be a big meeting. You're pulling. I'm sad to say, I did all-nighters from time to time, where you're in a rush. You may be working well, but the cortisol is flowing. And what do? You tend to rush for the sugar. And I think it was probably obvious afterwards, but at the time it was, again, I just need fuel. That's all I need. So I guess it's understanding those moments. Are there particular ones that come up in your work? I mean, so obviously stress is one of them. Are there any other triggers that cause people to, if you like, divert from the optimal path?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, stress is a massive one. And it's a physiological response that you are reaching for that sugar or those high fat foods when you are in that state of stress, because the hormone cortisol is actually made from cholesterol. So when you are in those periods of high stress, your body is saying, give me more cholesterol because I need to be making more cortisol. So there's a physiological reason why. I find often when people are feeling low, that's another time where they may reach for the high carbohydrate, high sugar foods. And that's because eating those foods, we know, gives us a very quick burst of serotonin, which is our happy hormone.
Yes.
So we know that if we want to feel better, we can turn to sugar and refined carbohydrates often, and that will give us that quick serotonin boost. So it's often a stress picture, or it's a low mood depression type picture that causes people to lose course. Or it's not truly understanding what the problem is and how to correct it. It's everybody being their own individual nutritional therapist saying, oh, I read this and it worked for that person, so let me try it. And it often then doesn't.
Yes, I see. That point about mental health, because mental health issues are very prevalent in business. Some, everything from burnout to anxiety to depression and more. You just referred to the link between those aspects and then what you eat. But what about the other way round? Does it work both ways? i.e., what you eat exacerbates or creates potential mental health issues?
It can do in some instances. So, like I said, we need to remember that our bodies work by using nutrients. So, mental health is massively complex. There are many systems of the body that are involved. Inflammation is one key area that is involved, but we also know the whole neurotransmitter, so serotonin, dopamine, and a neurotransmitter called GABA. Those are implicated in mental health conditions. But one of the main things that is at the root cause of mental health conditions is inflammation. And what you eat can cause inflammation within the body, especially if your diet is very high in refined carbohydrates, sugars, and oils that are higher in what we call omega-6 than omega-3. So it's the types of oils that are often used in refined foods that we can buy off the shelf.
Yes. Gosh, this is brilliant, and clearly shocking in many ways. Let's get into a few specifics, because often nutrition is an area where there's lots of fads or new things that come around where people go, oh, I must do that. And I mean, in the business world, say, for example, I know many executives who do the 5+2 diet, or I go low calorie. This is what I've heard. I'm no expert. On the 2 days, I might go down to, as a man or woman, to sort of 800 to 1,000 calories, and then go back up on the 5 days to sort of more norms of what it is, 2,000, 2,500. What are your views on that approach?
If it's done well, then that's okay. But often it's done as a way to control weight. And often those 500 calories are not very nutrient dense. So it might be, okay, I'm going to have a slice of toast with Marmite on it because that is X number of calories, rather than saying, I'm going to have a salad with some oily fish and some avocado because that is my 500 calories.
Yes.
So if that was your 500 calories, great, because you're getting all of the nutrients from the salmon, from the avocado, from the green leafy vegetables, but you're not getting many nutrients from a piece of toast with Marmite on, not to mention what that does to your blood sugar levels and therefore the effect that that has on how you think, feel and perform.
Yes. I always wonder, so in short, it is possible to do it, but you still have to get the right nutrients inside. I mean, I always thought that on the 2 days that it must be difficult to perform fully, because you haven't got enough stuff inside to really give, whether it's the physical aspects of if you're presenting and walking around or getting your brain working. I always felt some colleagues, and I won't name them, although they may be listening, were a little bit slower, a bit slower on some of those days, and perhaps that's the inevitable consequence of having fewer calories in the system.
So if somebody is attuned their body to burning fat for fuel, then on the days where they're eating 500 calories, they may be producing more of what's called ketones, and those are very beneficial for mental focus and mental function. But if your diet is very high in carbohydrates, there's no ways that you're going to be burning ketones on the day where you have only 500 calories.
You see, that's the one thing I know reasonable amount about, because my son has epileptic activity and has a modified ketogenic diet, which has had a profound impact on his.
Yes.
And it's, I mean, it shows how much of a fraud. I'm not a fraud, but it shows how human I am. I've gone through that for the last 11 years, and yet I still don't practice all of it myself. But there you go, there's self-flagellation as we go. So that's the 5+2. What about supplements? Again, some people I know swear by supplements. They say, look, I'm having my diet, but I can't possibly get it right every day. Let me use some supplements. What are your views generally, and any specific examples, of course, on supplements?
I love the use of supplements, and I think that they are necessary now. Our soils are fairly depleted and our stress levels are very high. So even if you are eating a diet that is high in nutrients, you still probably aren't meeting your RDA of all of your vitamins and minerals. I mentioned stress as well, because stress depletes certain nutrients within the body that are essential for both mental health and for cognitive function. Things like magnesium and B vitamins, as well as vitamin C, are all depleted in times of stress. And I don't think I know any executive that is not stressed. So I definitely believe in supplementation, but I'll throw a caveat in. It's good quality supplements that I believe in. So please don't go down to Boots or to Holland & Barrett or to your local supermarket and pick up the vitamins or minerals off the shelf there, because you probably aren't going to be getting what it says on the bottle. And some nutrients in specific supplements are in a form that is more absorbable in the body. So it's definitely worth getting hold of somebody who is able to source some quality supplements for you. And it's about individualization as well. We are all made up differently. We all have different genes, which means that we may need different nutrients as well. We may need extra of certain nutrients. So testing is a really great way to know what your levels are, and then supplementing specifically from them or from those results.
Gosh, I'm surprised by your comment about the picking up some supplements off the shelf. I guess you have to pick wisely in terms of good quality ones that can be absorbed and are clearly relevant to you, as opposed to just saying, I need some supplements, chuck them in. Yeah, absolutely.
And expect them to be the miracle cure or the answer to you having better performance or feeling better.
Yeah. Well, I guess the cue's in the word, right? It's a supplement. It's not a substitute. I mean, you referred to this throughout this conversation, Dana, in terms of your gut safe model and elements of the gut safe model. But just you've done a lot of work in that space, so I want to make sure we showcase that model for listeners and viewers. Tell us a bit more.
Thank you so much. So it's a model that I developed to help illustrate how we can improve our mental health. And it focuses on elements that we need to be looking at that improve our gut health because of the role that our gut plays in mental health. But each of the elements in and of themselves have a role to play in our mental health as well. So the elements are genetics, utilization, which is actually movement, time, which means sleep and daylight exposure, signaling, referring to the gut-brain axis and how that works, anxiety, which is stress. If anyone is anxious, that is a stress on the body, and stress plays a really large role in both gut health and mental health. Food, of course, and the environment. So it's how all of those elements have a role to play in both our gut health and our mental health.
I really love how you brought all of those together, and I guess the more I'm learning about this and in some cases practicing it, and the more I'm listening to you today, it really has to be at the center of not only what you're practicing day to day, but how you think. And I often think that nutrition and the other elements like movement, sleep, and so on have, especially in some macho male dominated environments, and I'm not anti-men, I'm a man myself, it's often been look, just put your head down, do the work, and you got your weekend to recover, and so and push, and it's considered a bit soft. That's my perception. Whereas now I think it's if you make that comparison with an elite athlete or other people, it's actually fundamental, right? This is fundamental to performance.
Yes, I agree. And especially if you're wanting to improve your performance. And I think that's where I hope many people go from. This is how I am today, but I can improve the way that I perform simply by taking all of those elements into account.
Let's talk about a little bit about you, because I know you shifted from the world of professional services to your current role as a nutritional therapist. What were, if you don't mind sharing, what were some of the biggest changes you've made to your own mindset and practices?
I think it is taking more of that holistic approach. I've been interested in health and well-being since I was about 16, so I've slowly made changes throughout the years. I didn't leave my corporate career and then start to make the changes.
Right.
But there were small changes that I made along the way, and a lot of them were more lifestyle factors, taking stress into consideration, implementing more stress management techniques, especially when you start to have a family and lots of things start to pile up. So I think that's what I really have incorporated more of since making the change, since qualifying. Yeah.
And if you had to have your time again and you wanted to infuse more of an understanding and application of nutrition and all the other elements into the workplace, how would you start that conversation? If you're in a team, for example, or starting a project and you really needed to perform at your best, how would you do it?
I think I started doing it when I was still in the corporate world, actually. And it was simple, small conversations like at lunchtime. If you added a little bit of this, you might feel that you're not as sleepy in the afternoon.
Yeah, the 3 o'clock. Sorry to interrupt. The 3 o'clock one. I remember specific individuals who are well known. 3 o'clock came, and suddenly they're literally sort of nodding up. Sorry, I'm interrupting you, but what is that
That's
3 o'clock
okay.
sort of lull that we see all the time?
It's often a dip in blood sugar levels. And people think that they need to balance their blood sugar levels when they are eating lunch or when they're eating dinner. They forget that you need to start balancing your blood sugar levels from the moment you actually wake up. And things like caffeine and carbohydrates eaten on their own can imbalance your blood sugar levels. So including things like fat and protein with each meal and snack helps slow down the release of those sugars again, which helps keep your blood sugar levels more balanced, which means that your energy levels are more balanced.
So I interrupted your flow, but you were saying that in terms of how do you start the conversation? You'd say, look, at lunchtime, just perhaps make a suggestion or an observation.
And I think it's about helping people understand how their bodies work, rather than let's not take our bodies for granted. Let's understand how they actually work, how they function, and let's start thinking about the raw materials that we put into our bodies, because there's the old adage of garbage in, garbage out. So if we can change that to nutrients in, you're going to get performance out.
I mean, the more I listen to this, I'm not going to go into all of the details because she's not here, but my wife is, partly because she's been managing my son's ketogenic diet. I mean, I've been helping quite a lot as well. She's practiced many of the things. She's not a nutrition expert like yourself, but practiced many things. She's been a vegan for many years and been very healthy, unlike some vegans. And, the sharpness of thought and fitness levels have gone through the roof, and the delta between her and me has become bigger in many aspects. But that's another topic. I always ask guests to move on quickly before I start feeling embarrassed. I always ask guests on this podcast a couple of questions about themselves. One is, when you're doing your best work, and you're having your best day, you're absolutely smashing it, performing and so on. Apart from having a glass of water, as you just did, very good, love the habit. What are the critical foundations? What helps you do your best work?
Prioritizing sleep, I think, would be the top one. Moving your body. I think that moving your body really helps provide mental clarity. And nutrition. I would say those are the key ones, making sure that you're eating a diet that is balancing your blood sugar levels and providing the nutrients that your brain needs to function, and supporting your gut microbiome as well. We haven't spoken a lot about the gut microbiome, but there's a specific bacteria in the gut in the gut microbiome that helps promote that state of flow where you are your most productive.
Please, if there's more to say, I want to hear about it. Please. I know that's a topic you've written about and spoken about.
Yes, the gut microbiome is a large area. There's a lot of research that has gone into it, and especially lately, the research that the gut microbiome has to play in mental health. And it's because of the way that the gut and the brain talk to each other. There's a nerve that connects the gut and the brain called the vagus nerve, and actually only 20% of signals go from brain to gut. 80% of those signals go from gut to brain. And it's often the gut microbiome that is involved in that signaling to the brain to let the brain know that all is well. We don't need to launch a stress response. All is well. It helps control all things like thyroid and all other functions within the body as well. So the gut microbiome really is a key area and something that we should be focusing on when we think about how we eat as well.
Got that 20 and 80%. Wow. I mean, I'm learning so much. I mean, this is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And let's go from the sort of day-to-day to the bigger picture for you then. I mean, what impact are you looking to have on the world around you?
I'm hoping that through the work that I do, people understand that they can take control of their own health, especially their mental health. I think the adage of let's stash the stigma of mental health is not helpful because it might give people a community, but it doesn't give people hope of a better future. And I think there is a better future for anyone who is feeling the way that they are. If they are not feeling optimal, there's a reason for it. And let's start listening to our bodies and putting things in place so that we can really support our own health and take control of our own health so that we can control our own destiny.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's brilliant. Well, I mean, I've learned a lot. Well, I'm sure all the listeners and viewers have learned a huge amount too, and will be already taking notes, thinking, what am I going to do after this to do things better? Where can people find out more about you and your work online?
Thank you so much. Yes. So I've got a website, which is dcnutrition.co.uk. I am fairly active on LinkedIn as well as Dana Chapman. So if people give me a follow or pop onto my website, then they should be able to learn more.
Thank you. I mean, you've been crystal clear, lots of great examples, facts, countering some conventional wisdom or some myths, perhaps. Fantastic. So thank you, Dana. That was another edition of Lancefield on the Line. I do hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Please do check out the other episodes in the series. Check out the YouTube channel, sign up to it, as well as the podcast, and do give us a wonderful rating as you do so. Thank you ever so much again, Dana.
Thank you.